Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here. So, this is another one of them spur of the moment type of videos where I just talk about things that have been on my mind lately. So no doubt a lot of you have heard that one pretty popular story across social media in the past couple of days has been the story that Jordan Peterson was recently banned or suspended from Twitter or whatever due to a comment about that degenerate Ellen Page. First of all, why is a guy like Jordan Peterson, or anybody for that matter, still using Twitter? I mean, I can't think of a single reason why anybody would still use that site, but whatever, I digress. Point is, he was banned for some comment about Ellen Page supposedly having her breast removed. Now, as far as the whole Ellen Page story goes, up until recently, it's not anything that I've really paid much attention to. For those of you who don't know, Ellen Page is basically some washed up, relatively inconsequential actress who barely anybody had even heard of, and even those who did had all but forgotten about her. All I knew about her was that she basically had a few small bit parts in some movies in the mid 2000s, and as far as I'm aware, the only major movie she was in was X-Men 3, where she basically had an inconsequential role, and you could have really done the whole movie without her. I'm the Juggernaut bitch was probably the only somewhat memorable scene of her entire career. But whatever, my point is, she was basically nobody. And when she reached her 30s, as what usually happens to these loser actresses who nobody cares about, she went completely into obscurity where she belongs. She wasn't in many movies anymore and wasn't really a big deal anymore. She just kind of disappeared. Then a few years ago, from absolute obscurity, she did what many of these desperate, attention-seeking scum celebrities do, and she came out the closet. Of course, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's what they all do, really. I mean, how else was she going to get back in the papers, on the news? It's just a thing that you see with these celebrities, is they have this pathological, desperate need for attention and validation. And the best way to get that in recent history is, of course, to come out the closet and say that you take it up the rear. That'll at least get you a few hours of press coverage. But the problem is that wasn't enough, was it? Really wasn't enough at all. You see, coming out the closet is old news. It's old-fashioned, and it's become a bit of a cliche at this point. So coming out of the closet, it really isn't enough to get you any serious attention. So, shortly after coming out of the closet, she predictably went right back into obscurity and nobody was interested once again. So a few years of desperate political moaning and failure to get any serious press and any serious attention or coverage at all. What does she decide to do? Well, she of course does the new trendy Hollywood thing that these degenerates do to get back in the public eye. She announced that she's no longer Ellen and she's now a man called Elliot. See, coming out as trans, that's makes a bit more of an impact than simply coming out of the closet these days, and it's more of a sure way to get noticed. Not only that, but one thing that those of us in the know have come to understand about the entertainment industry is that these celebrities are basically, they are the ultimate conformists, right? And the only way that they are able to receive press coverage is if they go ahead and promote the latest trend and try to encourage whatever followers and sycophants they have to do the same, degrading society one generation at a time. But if you're watching this video, you probably already know that. So why am I talking about this? Well, recently, like I mentioned earlier, Jordan Peterson was banned from Twitter, and that has predictably sparked a lot of debate, grifting, and pointless arguments on both sides. And if truth be told, I wasn't going to say anything about it, because it's really not worth my time, and these influencers and celebrities are none of my concern, really. So why am I deciding to do it? Well, one thing about this story really caught my attention. It's that this could be a little bit darker and more sinister than Jordan Peterson is making out. So, earlier in the video, I basically gave you my summary of what I think was going on with Ellen Page, or at least what I thought was going on with Ellen Page. Because, guys, The more I think about this situation, and the more I look into it, the more I'm starting to get the feeling that there's a little bit more going on than meets the eye here, and we might all be getting dragged into a particularly disturbing psyop. So let me stop rambling and get to the point. What am I insinuating here? Well, as you can tell by the title, I have a particular question I want to ask you guys. Now, assuming this Ellen Page story is to be taken seriously and taken entirely at face value, you basically know my views on it. But looking into it a little bit deeper, I think it could potentially be backwards, if you know what I mean, if you know what I'm getting at. I mentioned earlier that I never really knew much about Ellen Page. I never thought she was a big name or really looked closely at her. But recently, I've actually been looking at it a little bit more, and I've been looking at some older pictures of her, as well as some of the new ones, quote unquote, post-transition that have been released. And I have to say, guys, I'm not actually sure that Ellen Page was ever a woman to begin with. Now bear with me. Going back several years, there has been a particularly disturbing conspiracy theory floating around the internet that I have been kind of undecided on for quite a while. It's a theory that the government in the West and the entertainment industry have basically been breeding, grooming and manufacturing the entire lives and careers of certain celebrities and entertainers, as well as certain athletes and even some politicians, and basically raising them as the opposite gender. So basically they take a baby boy, raise him on hormone blockers and pump him full of estrogen his whole life, and essentially pass him off as a girl to the public. For example, several well-known celebrities have a sizable number of people on the internet who believe them to be posing as the opposite gender. One well-known one, for example, is Michelle Obama. Another one is Serena Williams, and even Beyonce. I've seen a lot of disturbing stuff over the years with a lot of people insinuating that those are essentially trans people, you know, passing off as women. There was a TV show released a few years ago. I never watched it because, I mean, obviously I'm not a degenerate simp loser who watches TV shows, but I digress. The show was called Stranger Things, and it's very suspicious because all the kids on that show appear to have been gender swapped. They all look like the opposite gender being passed off as each other. It's really creepy. And one of the things that I noticed quite recently with all the photos of Ellen Page is that, and look, this is very common with Hollywood, right? All these photos with female celebrities, it's very common that they do this. All the old photos are basically edited, right? These female celebrities are always covered in makeup. They always have camera filters, trick photography, as well as plastic surgery to make them look as perfect as possible. But when you see these people in regular mobile phone photos that have been unedited, you see them in person, you know, you see them just looking like regular people, and they don't look the same, do they? In fact, a lot of them look considerably more masculine. What I noticed about Ellen Page is that when she announced that she was trans, right, and started to show all those photos, all she really did was cut her hair short and stop wearing makeup and stop using camera filters, just showing real photos of herself, and she looked like a man. Like, if you'd have seen those photos, or if you'd have seen her walking around the street, you would have suspected it was a guy walking around. Right? You didn't really have to do a lot to convince us of that. Without supposedly going through any surgery at all, she already looked like a man. It makes me wonder, was Ellen Page ever actually a woman to begin with? Is this whole thing a massive psyop? Are they basically taking these celebrities and gender swapping them as kids to kind of psychologically brainwash and manipulate and confuse people into being sexually attracted to the opposite gender and normalizing transhumanism? And more importantly, is Jordan Peterson and his ilk in on it? Is he in on the joke? Or is he like the rest of us being brainwashed and confused? Or am I just a nutcase who's thinking too deeply and reading too much into it? let me know. Either way, it's an interesting topic, and I thought I'd just give my passing thoughts on it, because it's quite interesting and it's quite thought-provoking, isn't it? Let me know what you guys think anyway, and yeah, thanks for watching. God bless.